Welcome to the West Virginia Legislature on the West Virginia Channel. I'm Beth Voorhees. We're waiting for the Senate to gavel in for its 12:30 session, and we're wondering if they will discuss the budget. Up for passage in the Senate today, House Bill 101, the budget bill making appropriations of public money out of the Treasury in accordance with Section 51, Article 6 of the Constitution. The bill is on third reading, but the Senate can amend this bill on the floor today. We heard Senate Finance Chairman Mike Hall announce on the floor that the strike and insert amendment would be on the Senate's automation system for senators to read before the 12:30 session so that they can be prepared to discuss and pass this budget bill today. Before them is the House version of the budget. The strike and insert amendment would be the Senate's version of the budget. So wait with us as we wait for Senate President Bill Cole to gavel in the Senate floor session for this afternoon. This is the West Virginia Legislature on the West Virginia Channel. We are waiting for the Senate floor session to begin. It was scheduled for 12:30. It's now 1 o'clock, and it still has not begun. Watch with us as we wait for Senate President Bill Cole to gavel in this floor session and see if they take up House Bill 101, the budget bill. State House reporter Ashton Mara just informs us that the Senate is waiting for the DEP rules bills that were passed by the House this morning. They physically need to be in the Senate chamber, and they're waiting for the House to prepare those and bring them to the Senate chamber so the Senate can start work on those. So that's the delay, and we will stay here in the state Senate on the West Virginia Channel and see if they're ready to discuss the budget bill. Please stay tuned.
Senate will come to order. The clerk has a message from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 117 relating generally to the promulgation of administrative rules by the Department of Environmental Protection.
For to be received, the senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. The clerk will read the bill a first time.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 117 relating generally to the promulgation of administrative rules by the Department of Environmental Protection. First reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. The senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 separate days be suspended and that the bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its passage.
Senator from Jackson moves that the constitutional rule requiring bills to be read on 3 different days be suspended, the bill be read a second and a third time, be placed upon its passage. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 3 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than 4/5 of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rule suspended. Clerk will read the bill a second time.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 117 relating generally to the promulgation of administrative rules by the Department of Environmental Protection. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 117. Third reading of the bill.
Questions on passage of the bill? Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief explanation of the bill. You going to do it? Yeah, let Charlie.
Senator from Morgan, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee substitute for House Bill 117 is strikingly similar to House Bill 4053 as it passed the West Virginia Senate during the regular session. It contains the DEP rules bundle with one exception. Let me go over it for the members, Mr. President. The bundle has 43 rules in it. There are 13 rules that are new authorizations and 30 that are repealers. Consistent with what we were doing during the course of the regular session, repealing rules that are obsolete or archaic, unnecessary, and determined to be so by the state agencies. Consideration of this was added to our scope of work for this extraordinary session by Governor Tomlin with the amendment to his proclamation earlier this week. And then this bill was introduced by the executive as the governor's bill. And so it was introduced in both houses earlier this week. The House of Delegates took it up, considered it in Judiciary Committee yesterday, reported it to the floor, and passed it today. They've actually sent 2 bills to us. So I think immediately after the body disposes of this bill, we're going to be receiving a message from the House of Delegates regarding House Bill 118. What's different, and what the House Judiciary Committee did was they took the governor's DEP rules bundle and severed completely from it one of the rules. And it's the rule that's codified at 45 CSR 16, and it relates to new stationary source emission standards, performance standards for new stationary sources. With respect to so that's not part of this bill. It'll be embodied in House Bill 118. It was part of the bill, House Bill 4053, when we had it on the floor during the regular session. Within House Bill 117, the remaining 12 rules have previously voted on and approved by this body. The repealers were voted on and approved by this body during regular session, and there is no difference whatsoever in any of those, what we acted upon in March to what we have before us now in House Bill 117. Of the 12 authorization rules, 3 of them contained some additional amendments that had been added by the legislature, but again, they were part of what we had before us when this body considered it in March. The legislative amendments that have been adopted before and would be adopted again if this bill is advanced and passes today include amendments relating to fish testing standards. There's an amendment to address bonding and renewal requirements from 38 CSR 2 and amendments pertaining to above-ground storage tanks containing blasting agents under 47 CSR 63. As said, those were already approved by this body in March. Mr. President, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. Otherwise, urge passage of the bill.
Questions on passage of the bill? Is there discussion? Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the chairman would yield, please.
Senator yields.
Mr. Chairman, I know one of the reasons it's very important that we get this rule out and this bundle finished has to do with federal funding, particularly in some DEP projects. The one rule that we're removing, I understand, has something to do with wood stoves. Is that correct?
Well, the rule is broader than that. It relates to performance standards for new stationary sources that emit. We can talk about that when, I'm happy to try to answer it now. Wood stoves, there's a section or a part of that rule, the federal rule, that relates to wood stoves. So it's a much broader subject than just wood stoves that'll be embodied in the rule adopted if we pass it that is included in House Bill 118.
Okay. We're going to include it somewhere else? Is that what you told me?
I'm pretty sure that lined up behind this is a second message from the House of Delegates with respect to House Bill 118.
And I guess the question I have probably will relate to the next rule then bundle. I'm curious, are we losing anything out of this money-wise federally based on what we're doing with this change? But that may be answered in the next rule.
Well, I think the answer to the question applies to both bills, that if we pass both bills, we are not jeopardizing any funding that would inure to the benefit of the state's environmental protection program.
It's been a while since we discussed this rule in committee. I know there were issues dealing with water quality and those type of things in this rule, and I've been assured that the EPA is still not, has to wait until we get this rule before they rule on those water standards. Is that correct?
We've communicated with Department of Environmental Protection, specifically their counsel, Kristen Boggs, and they are satisfied with the form in which these rules are before us now.
Okay. Did the House change these rules in any fashion at all? They're exactly as we passed them out of here except for the one change.
The House has not changed these rules in any fashion from what we passed in the regular session, with the exception of the rule that addresses, it's 45 CSR 16, is severed from this bundle, and it is the sole subject of House Bill 118, which I think is going to be our next item of business.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea, those opposed vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine, ascertain results on this question. 33 yeas, 1 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted the affirmative, declare the bill passed. Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Jackson moves the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none on this question. 33 yeas, 1 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Clerk has another message from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of engrossed House Bill 118, Department of Environmental Protection Air Quality Rule relating to standards of performance for new stationary sources.
Report will be received. Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. The clerk will read the bill a first time.
Engrossed House Bill 118, Department of Environmental Protection Air Quality Rule relating to standards of performance of new stationary sources. First reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. The senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 separate days be suspended and that the bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its passage.
The senator from Jackson moves that the constitutional rule requiring bills to be read on 3 different days be suspended, that the bill be read a second and third time, be placed upon its passage. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine, ascertain results. On this question, 31 yeas, 3 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than 4/5 of those present and voting having voted the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rule suspended. Clerk will read the bill a second time.
Engrossed House Bill 118, Department of Environmental Protection Air Quality Rule relating to standards of performance for new stationary sources. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill be advanced to third reading. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed House Bill 118, third reading of the bill.
Questions on passage of the bill? Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Committee Substitute for House Bill 118 relates and would authorize one single DEP rule. It is the one that was severed from House Bill 117 just passed a moment ago. Specifically, the rule it addresses 45 CSR 16, and that is relating to standards of performance for new stationary sources. So this rule adopts and incorporates federal standards, emission standards under the Clean Air Act. And there are, I think, compelling legal reasons why we have to adopt this rule and bring our regulatory regime into compliance with the federal regulatory regime. The DEP sought to revise this rule to adopt and incorporate the federal law changes over the course of the past year. Some of those include emission standards for utilities that are going through modifications or changes. So the federal government, under the Clean Air Act, has new regulations that regulate those kinds of utilities when they make changes or modifications to their, or closures. Closures are included as well. Okay, one of the proposed changes in the federal regulations related to residential wood-burning stove heaters. In particular, the changes sought to be adopted by reference in the original DEP rule include 2 subparts of a larger federal rule. And they are subpart AAA and subpart QQQQ. AAA relates to standards of performance for new residential wood heaters. And so it's imposition of a new standard and regulation by the federal government on people who manufacture wood stoves, wood heaters, as to a new standard they have to meet. Subpart QQQQ relates to standards of performance for new residential hydronic heaters and forced air furnaces. So these new federal regulations do not include any federal emission limitations that would apply to heaters fueled by gas, oil, or coal. And the final rule does not include any federal requirements associated with wood heaters or other wood-burning appliances that are already in use in people's homes. The House of Delegates, and members may remember on the final night of the regular session, that was the issue, the difference between the Senate version of that House bill and the House version of it. that caused those bills, caused the bill to fail on the final night of the session because we didn't get them reconciled in time. But the House delegates was concerned about having those standards included in the bill, the rule. And so they have been removed. They are excluded in this bill. So in terms of comparing what we passed in March with what we have before us now, they are identical. If you add this bill and House Bill 117, which we just passed together, they're exactly the same as what we passed in March, except that this bill strips out from the rule that's authorized the incorporation of those two federal subparts, AAA in caps and QQQQ in caps. Those are excluded. The effect of that will be that the DEP then will not be the entity that regulates the manufacture of wood stoves on as far as that emission standard, the new emission standard goes. Here's what I've been told about it, that there are a handful, maybe a few more than that, but single digits, entities that manufacture wood-burning devices that would be covered by this rule. They are covered by the federal rule, and they will have to comply with the federal rule. I'm told that they are certificated now by the EPA and not the DEP. So I don't think striking this, which the House of Delegates has done, from the rule affects the regulatory regime. It certainly doesn't change the standard. They still have to comply with the federal standard, but it will not be DEP as to those handful of manufacturers of wood stoves that would be the enforcement agency, because that is excluded from the rule. I hope that's as clear as it can be. I'll be happy to try to answer questions, Mr. President.
Questions on passage of the bill? Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk declare the machine.
Both these bills now head to the governor.
Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain results on this question. 33 yeas, 1 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, declare the bill passed. Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Jackson moves the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none on this question. 33 yeas, 1 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate have voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Senator from Jackson.
Both of those bills, the DEP rules bundled bill and the separate bill regarding wood stoves, are now on their way to the governor, having passed the House this morning and the Senate just now.
Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, and I do have one. I move the Senate stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Are there announcements? Senator from Jackson.
Yes, just for the members, the budget is available on the system now, and printed copies are being delivered to your desk as I speak. And so just want to make you aware of that and let you know that you have availability to the budget at this moment. And so we'll, again, come back at 2 p.m. today.
Are there further announcements? Senator from Preston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to invite you and all the members of this body to keep in their thoughts and prayers the superintendent of schools, Dr. Maturana, in the untimely passing of his wife.
Further announcements? If not, the question for the Senate stand in recess until 2 p.m. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have. The ayes do have. The Senate's in recess until 2 p.m.
So a little business done there. The Senate is in recess until 2 o'clock. It will be sometime after that. Before we actually get to House Bill 101 and the Senate's version of the budget bill. You can be assured that we will join the Senate once it is ready to go into session. We will be monitoring the Senate chamber and the Senate cameras, and as soon as it looks like that the Senate President is going to gavel them in, we will interrupt our programming and bring you that presentation about the budget bill at 2 o'clock this afternoon. For now, we will go back to our regularly scheduled program, and we will be back here on the West Virginia Channel when the Senate is ready to proceed. Until then, I'm Beth Voorhees for the West Virginia Channel, a service of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.